pretty looking people, but I can tell you people, they were the devil's children.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Aurora, Mickey, and from me. Well. I looked at the last 3 episodes. I survived. I actually should be grateful, because I don't know if you're aware of it, but we are all so privileged to be living in a world with Harry and Meghan and looking at the greatest love story that ever existed. Truly the greatest love story that ever existed. That, at least, was the message. The other message was, we should be filled with admiration for Harry and Meghan, because they are the greatest victims that ever lived. My goodness, Golgotha was nothing compared to their suffering. Nothing. And as for the Garden of Gethsemane, I mean, a bagatelle. Anyway, without further ado, I am going to plunge right in, because I think this is a situation that is going to roll and roll and roll for the next few days at any rate. Ian Guthrie says, Lady C, can we please have your initial reactions to the final 3 parts of the mockumentary? If you're so minded, you can give us a detailed breakdown later, but I am sure I speak for many when I say, right now we need your overview. And while we are getting the overview, Aurora, leave those flowers alone. Come on. Aurora's trying to pull down an arrangement of flowers. She stopped. Well, to answer, my initial, immediate, and in reality superficial reactions are as follows. I have a hair from one of the dogs. Got rid of it, thanks. Well, the very first of the 3 program opens with a lie. Of course, by now we should be used to the fact that Harry and Meghan and the truths are very, very distant. Shall we say almost strangers? Oh, but this is a really outrageous lie. Without naming Samantha Cohen, Meghan makes it absolutely clear that she's speaking about Samantha Cohen because she identifies her. And she then says that she basically gave her an analogy regarding fish, a very obscure, ridiculous analogy that sounded very Meghannian to me. And I'm assured by people who know Samantha Cohen that there's no way she would ever have said something like that. And she doesn't speak like that. She doesn't think like that. And she certainly wouldn't have been indecorous enough to be giving the message to Meghan that she was an organism. But never one to miss a laurel wreath of thorns if she can, because she's such a sufferer. I mean, she has the sins of the whole world upon her shoulders. She has knocked our good Lord Jesus Christ out of the running, and she has taken over his throne. Barking. Well, of course, there's also what struck me was Harry's supposed offer to his father that he was prepared to give up the Sussex title Now, note the way he put it, the Sussex title. He and Meghan would then have been Prince and Princess Henry of Wales at that time. Doubtless she would then have been Princess Meghan of Wales. And since everybody knew that the Queen wasn't going to last forever, she would have hung on to that. So you'd have had the Prince and Princess of Wales, Prince George of Wales, Princess Charlotte of Wales, Prince Louis of Wales. Then you would have had Princess Meghan of Wales. Well, I don't know why Harry doesn't just carry through on that offer, because there is a petition for him to voluntarily put his titles into abeyance. Not only the Dukedom of Sussex, but he would no longer be Prince Henry of Wales. He would now just be Prince Henry. And she would be Princess Henry, but she would doubtless be calling herself Princess Meghan. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, I have to say, I thought phantasmagoric and fantastical and unfactual and imaginative and imaginary as the episodes were, you have to give credit where it's due. Netflix does things brilliantly. It's beautifully produced, it's beautifully executed, like The Crown. At least with The Crown, they had a pretense that it was a fictionalized drama. Here, they just say it's fact, even though most of it is fiction presented as fact. The reality is Netflix, Harry, Meghan, and all of their bangarang cohorts all have an agenda, and they're sticking to it through thick or thin, irrespective of the facts, and they just flick those facts away as if they were so many flies. Notice, though, that Harry and Meghan were playing to the cameras from the very outset, from the second day of their relationship. Second day. Who in their right mind, unless you are an empty narcissist who has to have visual validation of your life, plays to a camera with the frequency that those two did? I don't think it's Harry. I think it's Meghan. I mean, their intimate moments. For instance, they're at Frogmore House. She's sitting on the kitchen counter. He's without his coat. This is presumably after they have come back from the goodbye event where she wore the red dress, remember, and the red cape, and he wore his military uniform. The final, which is supposed to have been very upsetting for them. Then they are in the kitchen, elated. Is that natural? I just make that point. There are also other poses with them in the same spot. And who's photographing them? Do they have a tripod or do they have a photographer? Either way, what an act. And remember, this is supposed to be before they had cut a deal with Oprah. Except my information is that they were considering a deal with Oprah from before they got married. Well, they needed a storyline and they've come up with one. It's a combination of the greatest love that ever was and terrible racism from a country and a royal family and a wicked establishment. I can't believe it. Really? It's so terrible. Well, the most ominous and rampant of the agendas is the racist one. So we have really a Shakespearean package of Romeo and Juliet, the great love story. But since you can't have the warfare between the Montagues and the Capulets, you have a heroic fight against injustice, racial injustice especially. And then they have a host of people of colour who are happy to push this agenda, plus one white employee called James Holt. They all see racism where you and I and any other reasonable person would see something else. I, as a Jamaican, find this very, very disturbing. The idea that Britain is now a racist society is simply not borne out by the facts. They deliberately twisted everything to suit their agenda. And I'm going to use a small example. And I'm going to show you how malicious Netflix and irresponsible Netflix is. Do you remember in the Oprah interview how they had all of those fake headlines? Well, this seems to be something that American television companies of a certain sort do regularly, because Netflix has done the same thing. One of the headlines is where Anne Widdecombe, who to the Americans who are listening and the Europeans and Australians and South Africans, Anne Widdecombe is a conservative ex-MP, very virginal, very correct, devout Catholic. And she has always said that she thought that Meghan was trouble. She was saying this from when everybody, me included, thought Meghan was lovely. She has always said as well that Meghan's background, not her race, her background, each of us has a background, race has nothing to do with it, was the issue. Well, they use Anne Widdecombe's comment to imply that racist comments were rampant, except Anne Widdecombe's comment had nothing whatsoever to do with race. She alluded to Meghan's background because really she was saying her character. But she used a euphemism. She said her background. You know, the supposed race war that Meghan and Harry and their cohorts would like us to believe needs to be fought, has been fought and won. They remind me of the die-hard socialists who still think that the aristocracy needs to be conquered because they have too much power, notwithstanding the fact that since 1911 they've had no real power. Total anachronisms, totally out of date. The irony is the most disadvantaged segment of the British population at the moment is accepted as being poor, working class, white males between the ages of 17 and 22, not black or mixed race or Chinese or subcontinentals, black, white working class boys. There's also, as you're looking at the show, you see that the first part of their agenda, which is that there's tremendous racism in this country, and this is what has caused Meghan to have to leave. Not that she actually orchestrated the whole thing so that they'd be half in and half out, and the Queen kiboshed that. So it's nothing to do with the fact that she wanted to make money and had been trying to make money while she was in the royal family, and took her hustling, marching to California. No, it's racism that's caused her departure, notwithstanding the fact that had they been allowed to be half in and half out, there would have been no accusations of racism against the British people, the royal family. Yes, Harry and Meghan didn't like the press. Well, Harry has an obsession with the press, a very negative, destructive, and I'll tell you, as somebody whose life was really for 40 years seriously damaged by the press, he has a very skewed, unrealistic, and exaggerated hatred of the press. And if I say it, because I have suffered far more than Harry Windsor or Harry Sussex or whatever you want to call him today, because I've never had the protection of the palace. I never had the cosseting that he did. And I am but one of many public figures who is in this boat. And insofar as I'm aware, with the exception of Hugh Grant and the late Max Mosley, I can't think of anyone else except Harry and Meghan who want to shut the press down. Because all of us who are responsible understand that a free press is a bastion of liberty and a protection against overweening and overreaching politicians and their quest for greater power. But Harry and Meghan's agenda in this show is that, first of all, they are discriminated against on the grounds of race. However, and wait for it, Meghan was so popular after the Australian trip that the royal family was briefing against them and did them in, because Meghan was too popular. She, according to Harry, was doing the job better than anybody else, and they were so jealous of her, they had to shut her down. Insanity. But I'm telling you, paranoia is a very interesting phenomenon, because interwoven with exaggerated self-importance is everybody's after me. Well, half the time, nobody's after them. According to Harry, the palace was briefing against them to the media as a result of Meghan's popularity because it was threatening, according to him, the rest of the royal family. I mean, you couldn't make it up if you tried. Well, I'm here to tell you, it is a lie. Don't take my word for it. I mean, as you know, I despise most of the court correspondence, but one or two of them I actually have some respect for. But ask any of them, even the ones I despise, they will tell you it's completely untrue. For instance, ask Rebecca English of the Mail. She will tell you, and it's absolutely true, that she had a heck of a time getting the palace to stand up stories that she knew were true. Because the palace was intent on protecting Harry and Meghan, which of course is partly their job. So I'm not criticizing them being the palace. Of course you're going to protect your principals. Of course you are. It's a part of your job. However, Harry and Meghan have the people who were batting off the press, planting stories with the press, which is simply not true. What Harry and Meghan haven't told you, but I'm going to tell you, and I'm pretty sure the average member of the press wouldn't be telling you either, but since I'm not really a member of the press, I can tell you. Much of the information that the reporters, not only the court correspondents, but the general reporters get about the royals is from disaffected servants or servants who are topping up their rather low income with a little tip here and a little bit tip there to the journalists. So they provide information. That is how also the story of Meghan and Harry's romance leaked. Now, I cover this in my book, Meghan and Harry, The Real Story, and I'm not going to go into it again now. Suffice it to say that there is a strong suspicion that Meghan is the one in whose interest it was to have this information leaked. And Meghan has always been very assiduous in getting stories that she wanted published. So many of the stories that Harry and Meghan are now trying to say the palace briefed against them with were actually the stringers, as they're called, that all of the newspapers have. And I have to tell you, I have nothing against stringers as long as I have nothing to do with them. I look down on them if they are suitable from a suitable background, let's put it that way. And there are some stringers in social circles as well. I could mention one or two, but I'm not going to. And so I avoid them like the plague. But if they want to earn their money by disloyalty and leaking and betraying people's secrets, that's their business. As for disloyal staff, I won't have anything to do with them. But the fact of the matter is that this is where much of the press's information comes from. Of course, they're not going to tell you that. No, but Harry definitely knows this to be a fact. So blaming the palace is disingenuous, or then it is paranoia. And personally, it is my considered opinion that both Harry and Meghan are paranoid, but that they alight upon explanations that dovetail with their emotional needs and their prejudices, whomever they happen to be prejudiced against at the moment. I'm going to let you into a little secret. The palace, and I know this to be a fact because I have been in touch with them in the last however long, I'm not going to say to be too precise, but I have been in touch with the late Queen's very senior people about information that has come my way that I have been deeply concerned about. And the palace still protect Harry and Meghan. I don't want to say more than that. But believe me, I'm not speaking about the servile level now. I'm speaking about at a very senior level. And Harry and Meghan are still being protected. For how much longer is open to question. What is really saving Harry and Meghan's bacon at this point is that, and this is what I have been told, and I think it has a degree of sufficient plausibility for me, and also I've heard it from very reliable sources. The king is terrified that Harry will ultimately be tipped over and that really not only would he lose his son, but, and this is now my take on it, Meghan would be released to play the grieving widow. I mean, can you imagine Meghan Markle as a grieving widow? God, talk about the way she'd milk the situation for all it was worth. There are only so many options that the royal family can actually implement at this point safely. And personally speaking, I think they're absolutely right to hold their powder, because the idea of the widow Sussex is one that I, for one, would find so beyond distasteful, and my goodness, would she milk it for all it's worth. What else also came across in the show was Harry's pride in having landed a good-looking girl like Meghan. He has a real complex about being a ginger. And he was so much like a supplicant, while Meghan is so much like a dominatrix, that you end up thinking Harry is her submissive. And at least that's what I ended up concluding. Just from looking at the show, incidentally, not anything else. And what really struck me looking at this was between these three and the previous three, both Harry and Meghan come across as self-haters. He hates himself and has a massive chip on his shoulder and complex because he's a ginger. And she hates herself because she isn't white. And she has been outed as being not white by the British press. And of course, the British press and the royal family and the British establishment and everybody here made the huge mistake of embracing her as a woman of colour. And she doesn't want anybody. No, it's got nothing to do with me. No, keep that away from me. Oh. What I also found interesting about the whole colour business is that Meghan has used it, flogged it to death. To turn herself into a victim. It's almost as if she thinks, well, you were all outrageous enough to decide that I'm black and I'm not black. And so, well, I'm going to use it and I'm going to punish you at the same time. So I'm going to turn it into something destructive and weaponize it, which she has done. I mean, the performance of most of those people in that show, because it's a show, reprehensible. What I also found interesting as a message in the last 3 episodes were how determined they were to set themselves up as innocent reactors to a toxic situation that is of their own creation. Because race was not an issue. Bad behavior was an issue. The press were writing about the fact that Meghan was mistreating people. They didn't write about the fact that Harry was mistreating people. But Harry also was. But they were writing about Meghan because most of the complaints were about Meghan because Harry was backing up Meghan. So he was complicit. So they have everybody ganging up against them because William and Catherine and Charles and Camilla and the Queen and Prince Philip and Sophie and Edward and Andrew and Sarah are all jealous of them and her outstanding success. But if you examine it for 2 seconds, you begin to see, not only can it not be true, and the few stories that they have had to spin show you that there weren't so many, otherwise they wouldn't have needed to spin. For instance, Anne Widdecombe is just one example. But Meghan never got rid of any of her California people. She had her agent, she had her manager, she had her lawyer. Everybody was on speed dial so that Meghan could, once she was a member of the royal family, milk the situation financially and cut deals. That's how I came to write my book. People were concerned, and my book was supposed to eliminate the problems by putting a check on Meghan's behavior, except it didn't. She bolted before it was possible, and I think she always intended to bolt. She also set out, and this doesn't come across in the show, to antagonize Harry's circle. I mean, if you look at those 3 episodes, Nacho Figueras saying that, Harry wanted a simple life. Yes, he did. Harry did want a simpler life. Harry and Meghan both want all of the perks without any of the labour. They want to be able to show up to something glamorous, have everyone, oh, how wonderful you are. Oh, you deserve an award for being the most wonderful ginger and the most wonderful woman of colour. Oh, sorry. You deserve awards for being humanitarians and philanthropists, giving £10 a month to an animal rescue. My goodness, you're such philanthropists. Oh, you deserve 3 awards, not just 1. They bolted not because they were being prejudiced against racially, although that's the message in this. They bolted because they weren't allowed to make money. They weren't allowed to make money. And they thought they could outmaneuver the Queen, who outmaneuvered them, because this comes across very clearly in the show, actually, how the Queen outmaneuvered them, because Harry's trying to make out that he rang his grandmother and she said that when they came back, they were to come and have tea and spend the night. Well, first of all, you have tea, but you spend the night? How does that work? After tea comes dinner. So right there, I smell a little something. Fish. But anyway, let's accept it as the fact. And then when he landed, he was told no, he couldn't see his grandmother. What Harry knows, and I know, and you might not know, is that the Queen was notorious for not liking confrontation. And she bent over backwards to avoid confrontation. There is no way the Queen was going to have Harry go and chew off her ear, try to get her to agree to things that she had no intention of agreeing to. And then he would be able to say the Queen agreed. So what did she do? She got the meeting cancelled. It wasn't Sir Edward Ford. It wasn't her private secretary who was responsible. The people at the palace surrounding her didn't hijack her. They were there to fulfill her wishes and did. And if he doesn't know it, he's dumber than I think he is. You know, Harry and Meghan make out that she was unique where the press is concerned because she is a woman of colour. There's nothing unique about Meghan Markle. The British media is notorious, but it serves a valuable function. She's had it no worse than Camilla, Catherine, Sophie, Sarah, Princess Margaret. No worse than any of the other royals. Why, as the rest of the family said, does Harry think that Meghan is so special that the press should be shut down for her? Because that's the natural consequence of what Harry and Meghan have sought. And when Harry says it's because of her colour, colour has nothing to do with it. But Meghan and Harry both knew that decamping to the US would have a welcome side effect aside from all the money that they would make. They would be able to better manage the press. And I cover this in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. I go into the press differences and how in America, Vanity Fair, people, they all do cut and paste. Your PR sends something out to them, that's what is printed. It's not what happens here. Thank God. Now we have Netflix and Spotify doing not what's printed, but what is the party line. And the party line is based on a series of falsehoods. Harry and Meghan have, in this show, in these last 3 episodes, dragged everyone in. Charles, the Queen, don't think they haven't trashed the Queen as well, because the Queen was alive when they made this. If they want you to believe that they didn't know the Queen was dying, the Queen would have been alive to see this attack not only upon her son and her grandson, but upon herself. I think the whole thing stinks to high heaven. But one of the things that I found really interesting was Meghan's use, because she's very good at playing people who are naive. And she has played both Tyler Perry and Ashleigh, her niece, like a violin. She's not only Harry that she's played, and Harry's now complicit up to here. I can see why Charles, and to a lesser extent William, are worried about the outcome where Harry's concerned, because he has gone for broke with her. He has done what Patricia Hearst did. He has turned the guns from the enemy on the friends. But what's really interesting is that Tyler Perry got in touch with Meghan before the wedding. And I am told by somebody who knows about these things, let's put it that way, I need to be careful that I don't unmask anybody. Tyler Perry would have written that letter at the behest of Oprah. Oh, Tyler, write the letter. She'll ask you to the wedding. And she didn't. He wrote the letter before the wedding. Yet another disappointing person, because Tyler Perry wasn't grand enough. He's rich enough, but he wasn't up there with George Clooney and Oprah, so he couldn't be asked to the wedding. But when it suited her to use Tyler Perry, she picked up the phone and she phoned him, and and Julia Roberts, so demure and so innocent. Tyler, we need a house and a plane. And he, poor schlump, jumps in and provides them. Well, good for him. I do wish, though, he'd actually use his brains, because he must have some. Although I also gather that he's very much into supporting the sisters and the brothers. So maybe it's all about colour from their point of view. And as for Ashleigh, she reels her back in. She dumps her for the wedding. She waits until last year when they're doing this show and she knows she needs Ashleigh and she reels her back in. And poor Ashleigh is naive enough to believe that Meghan, who has sincerity down pat when it suits her, Mickey, reach that $3 bill for me. I want to go shopping. She reels her back in, and Ashleigh is yet again a performing seal. Notwithstanding the fact that Meghan has, in this show, got her lawyer to trash her father and the male newspapers, in my opinion, unfairly. And she trashes everybody that it suits her to trash. Now, Ashleigh has to know that her grandfather and her mother, her biological mother, are the people who put her in touch with Meghan. But Meghan has excluded them. And as for Doria's performance, I have to tell you, when I saw Doria at the wedding, I thought she was dignified. Now I think she is slipperier than an eel and a snake. That, her demeanor, I've seen people like her in Jamaica. Usually staff, I have to tell you. Wily, playing the cards just right. This is my way to the top. I've seen so many of them do it, of a type. I've employed some. I was astonished to see that a woman I used to have respect for has exposed herself as, in my opinion, beneath contempt. Beneath contempt. As for the rest of the crew, the less said about them, the better. If you would like, I will go through the programs the way I did with the first three, with a fine-tooth comb, and tell you the lies. Hopefully, taking not quite as long as I did the last time. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and please remember, keep the questions and comments coming in. This cannot be done without you. God bless and goodbye.